Hey guys, thank you for coming back for Chapter 7 of the NASM Study Guide. This is Human Movement Science. Movement is described in 3 dimensions that are based on planes, which include the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes. Osteokinesmatic describes the observable movement of a limb, whereas orthokinesmatic describes the movement taking place at the joint itself. Movement is described using biomedical terminology that is universal to all professions in the allied health industry. The sagittal plane is an imaginary line that bisects the body into the left and right halves. Movements in the sagittal plane include flexion, extension, plantar flexion, and dorsiflexion at the foot and ankle. Sagittal movements would be bisects your body from in the middle into left and right sides. So imagine there's a line right here. So it'd be anything moving like this. So bicep curl is a movement in the sagittal plane. Dorsiflexion, which is bending your foot. I don't really want to show my foot. Moving your foot like this. Plantar and dorsiflexion. Those are both examples of movements to the sagittal plane. A good way to remember that I've heard is imagine you're in a really tight doorway. What movements could you do? So you could do bicep curls. You could do leg extensions. The transverse plane bisects the body to create upper and lower halves. The frontal plane bisects the body to create front and back halves. Movements in this frontal plane include abduction, adduction of the limbs relative to the trunk, lateral flexion of the spine, and eversion and inversion at the foot and ankle complex. So frontal movements. There we go. All right, and now we'll go into the transverse plane bisects the body to create upper and lower halves. Movements in this transverse plane include internal rotation and external rotation of the limbs, right and left rotation of the head and trunk, horizontal adduction and horizontal adduction. This is a key word is rotate. So this would be a transverse movement. And, twisting movements like this are transverse. Motions of the scapulae include scapular retraction, scapular protraction, and scapular depression, and scapular elevation. Muscle actions are described as isotonic, isometric, and isokinetic. All right, so isotonic, I don't know what that means. Isotonic is a contraction, tension remains the same. Whilst the muscle length changes, isotonic contractions differ from isokinetic contractions in that isokinetic contractions of the muscle speed remains constant, while superficially identical as the muscle force changes via length tension during the contraction. All right, so an isotonic contraction means there's movement of the arm or whatever muscle. Isometric means holding still. So if I was to have a kettlebell right here in between my hands, and I held it like this, and I just held it until my biceps reached failure, that'd be the example of a isometric contraction. Isotonic muscle actions can be broken down into concentric and eccentric phase. Concentric, eccentric. Muscles can play the role of agonist, synergist, stabilizer, or antagonist depending on the movement being performed. Closed chain movement anchor the body to the ground or a movable object, whereas open chain movements involve distal limb moving freely in space. Placing a muscle in a shortened position or lengthening a muscle beyond optimal length may reduce the force output, because the optimal length is the position where maximal overlap of actin and myosin filaments. The stretch-shortening cycle involves 3 phases, which include eccentric phase, amortization phase, and concentric phase. So we got down the concentric and eccentric. What is this other one? The action or process of gradually writing off the initial cost of an asset. That's not it. Amortization. All right, so according to a NASM blog article, the amortization phase component is a time of dynamic stabilization during which the muscle transitions from overcoming acceleration of gravity and loading energy to release it. If this segment lasts too long, the potential elastic energy can be lost. Maybe a whole video on amortization once I get a firm grasp on it. The term force couple is used to describe muscle that works in a synergistic function around a joint. The local muscular system involves muscle that generally attach on or near the spine and provide a stability for the LPHC. Guys, what does that mean? Lumbo, pelvic, hip, complex. The global muscle system can be broken down into subsystems, which include deep longitudinal, posterior, oblique, anterior oblique, and lateral subsystems. The subsystems describe integrated function of muscle groups to transfer force for complex multi-joint movements and stabilization of the human movement system. The amount of force produced by the human movement system relies on not only muscle recruitment, but also the lever type of the joint that is moving. Lever systems are classified as first, second, and third class. Third class levers are the most predominant levers in the human body. Muscle synergies describe the cooperative function of multiple muscles recruited by the nervous system to complete a given movement pattern. Proprioception is in the intrinsic awareness of the movement and bodily position in space. Feedback can come from internal or external sources and aid in the process of motor learning. Motor learning is the integration of motor control processes with the practice experience, leading to a relatively permanent change in capacity to produce a skilled movement. Because now we're getting into some of the deeper stuff, starting with the hard stuff from last chapter. So this chapter, motor learning. I don't believe I've heard that's a lot of important stuff. Proprioception, I've heard that is a term that is needed to be known. Different class levers, that is also one that is a term that those are concepts that you need to know. Force couple, those force couple relationships, you need to know not only as a term definition, but how it applies to different situations in the body. And the agonist, synergist, and stabilizer, those are big terms for being educated in NASM, not only just in NASM, but in general exercise science or general fitness. Thank you guys for watching. That is chapter 7. I'm still learning, so these videos are kind of, you learning along with me. But at some point, I do imagine that I will be more expert on these concepts. And not only will you be learning with me, maybe I can teach some people. But for now, thank you for learning along with me. And this is Rat Dad signing out.